Welcome to this week's episode of Trista's Plate Story podcast. I'm Trista Polo from iwokeupawesome.com, and I am your host. Each week we learn the story behind that vanity plate, the one you saw driving down the road. What did it say? What did it mean? Why did they choose it? This week we meet Amanda Gist from Nevada. Amanda is a professional speaker, writer, and storyteller speaking about messy life in a shiny, Instagram perfect world. She loves mac and cheese, thunderstorms, dark roast coffee, the Lumineers, and her rescue dog, Haley. Amanda worked as an actor in Hollywood for 5 years until bulimia and severe depression took over her life. But when she left LA to get help, she didn't have a plan for what would come next and fell into a deeper depression, having walked out on her dream and feeling like an utter failure. Amanda fought her way through years of suicidal depression and eating disorders and chose to live, now speaking, writing, and teaching to help others fight for their own lives. She's learned to believe it's never too late to dream a new dream. Amanda's plate, Fighter, is perfect for this story. Let's find out more about Amanda. Welcome to Trista's Plate Story podcast. I'm Trista Polo, and I have Amanda Gist on with me today. She's from Tahoe, and she is going to share with us about her license plate, which I think is very cool, because I think any license plate with a number being used as a letter is like 2 thumbs up. So Amanda, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. So tell us about your license plate. It's Fighter, the word fighter, and then the 3 is used as an E. Tell us the story behind your plate.
My plate, I actually have had a couple vanity plates in the last few years, and this one definitely has the most meaning to me. This one I decided to get when I was smack in the middle of a very deep episode of depression. And I'm one of those people that tends to have things like Post-it notes with affirmations and stuff like that stuck all around my apartment, and just kind of reminding me to anchor myself and continue moving forward, and just kind of keeps me going. And getting this plate with Fighter on it, I actually initially was going to get Warrior, and that was not available. Fighter was available with the 3, and I ended up liking it better. And it's kind of a reminder for me. Every time I walk out to my car, every time I get in my car, I'm reminded. It's another one of those anchors for me that just continues to push me forward and continues to serve as a reminder that I am strong enough to pull through this, and I am strong enough to move forward, and I'm strong enough to get to the other side.
Yeah, I think that the thing about depression is that it really does affect a lot more people than we realize, because it's something that you can sort of just live your life with, and nobody even knows what you're going through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think Mental Health America, the last statistics they released were like 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 adults experiences depression in their lifetime.
Wow. So, why do you think it's so high?
I think especially, well, right now with everything that our world is experiencing and all the changes and stress and tension that we're experiencing, I think a lot of people are, for the first time, having to kind of be alone with their thoughts and spend time with themselves, and we're not used to that. So I think for a lot of people, we use things like booze and food and drugs and excessive social media and overworking and all of those things to kind of cover up the discomfort and the negative feelings that we don't want to deal with. And we're kind of being forced to feel them. And so I think a lot of people, especially right now, are experiencing depression. I think even outside of our current circumstances, just the world being we have so much pressure on us at this point, just with being pushed to constantly be hustling and constantly be successful and constantly have a bigger house and a better car and a beautiful family and all of these things that mark whether you're successful in life and whether you're where you need to be. And we have all the social media to compare ourselves to. And we just have, so many ways that we can feel like we're not good enough. And I think that's the biggest area where we tend to fall into a depression, is just feeling like we are not measuring up.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I definitely can resonate with what you're saying about the way things have been, with people being home and everything. It's tough because I think one of the things that kind of helps people, quote unquote, manage any kind of mental health challenge is distraction.
Yes.
And it's really easy to be distracted when you're running out to work and you're running to the store and you're running here and you're running there, and we're not running anywhere. Plus, we're with the people that maybe we feel like make things a little more heightened.
Yes.
So yeah, there's like a lot of managing yourself that needs to go on right now. And even people that are super well trained in how to manage themselves with productivity and structures and things can kind of feel the brunt of what's going on. It's a very weird time. Now, how did you realize that you weren't just having a bad time of it? How did you really get to the point to notice that it was actually a depression that needed to have some resolution?
I would say when I started to realize that it really needed some attention from me was when it began interrupting my life. And I think that is true with a lot of mental health issues, including things like anxiety and worry and things like that we all experience from time to time. Just like depression, we all experience, there's such thing as circumstantial depression. If you lose someone in your life, if you go through a breakup, things like that, we all experience depression from time to time. When it becomes to a point where it's interrupting your day-to-day life is really when you have to take a look at it and say, okay, I think, this is the time to put some focus onto it and put some energy into it. And is this really how I want to be living? And that was actually part of what highlighted for me when I needed to kind of seek out help. I was living in LA at the time when, in an interview, someone asked me where I saw myself in 5 years. And I think I rattled off something to kind of cover up what was actually in my mind. But I realized later on that in 5 years, I didn't necessarily see myself alive. And that was really, that comes back to the point of, is this really a life I want to live? Or is this issue with my mental health interrupting my life to that degree that this isn't the way I want to continue living? So that was really when I realized I needed to get into treatment, and I moved home from LA and have been surrounded by family and getting help and finding a way to move through it. But I think that's really the big indicator, is whether it's interrupting your life or whether you, kind of like you were talking about, you're able to manage it. And it is manageable, and it is something that you can have kind of coexisting with you without making a huge impact in your life.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge thing for you. I was going to ask you, what are the warning signs, but I would say that's a pretty big one for you to have that thought.
Right. Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, I think a lot of people live with suicidal thoughts that don't reach out and don't get help for them, just because of a lot of the stigma that's still associated today. And a lot of the judgment and a lot of just the stigma that we still haven't, the conversations are becoming more open and they're starting to become more widespread, but we're definitely still not there. I get messages from people on Instagram every single day that are just saying, following you has been the very first time that anyone has ever told me you're okay where you are and you're not alone. Like, there are other people experiencing what you're experiencing. So I think there's just an influx of people with mental health issues that they have never been told, you're not the only one going through this. You are not the only one experiencing this. And feeling alone and feeling isolated in it and feeling like there's something wrong with you and like you're damaged and like you're broken because of how your brain works is just one of the most dangerous places that you can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's wonderful that people have people out there that are advocating for mental health, not just to ignore it or try and treat it or cover it, but to actually just acknowledge it and treat it as something that is part of you and that you can grow from. So you are a keynote speaker and you actually advocate for mental health. Tell us a little about the messages that you put out that you want to make sure the people that listening to this podcast can hear.
Sure. I actually tend to gravitate towards a couple different messages when I speak. It really depends on what the event is that I'm working with and who the audience is. So for example, when I work with like a suicide prevention walk, we really work on the preventative side of it. So we really work hard on how important it is to reach out when you're first feeling those indicators that something is going on, that life doesn't feel maybe the way it used to, or maybe the way it should, because it's so much easier to reach, high schoolers, even middle schoolers, even as young as there's programs going into schools as young as elementary at this point that are really trying to work hard on prevention, because it's so much easier to prevent that and catch it early than it is to be, for lack of a better way to put it, comforting the families after you've lost that child. And so for suicide prevention, that's one of the big things we work on, is reaching out and just having that presence of outreach and having the resources available and trying to normalize outreach so that it's not something that's looked down on and it's not something that's stigmatized. And another thing that we tend to hit hard on is making people aware of what to look for in their friends and family. You can be one of the resources that people reach out to, but if they're not comfortable, you can also be someone who's recognizing signs that, you need to sit down with this person and have a conversation. And for a really long time, it was thought that you don't necessarily ask a person, are you thinking about suicide? Because it puts the thought in their mind. And research has actually shown that that is not the case. It opens up the conversation. If they are thinking about suicide, it opens up the conversation for them to say yes and to have a safe space to speak to someone about it. So that's another thing that we try to hit hard on, is just giving people the signs that they can look for so that they can care for their loved ones and look around and see, what could be indicative of someone that's experiencing a problem.
So are the signs different for adults than they are for children?
They tend to be the same with a little bit of differing. For example, with children, one of the signs is isolation. With children, you'll see things like they no longer want to participate in sports and things like that. They are kind of disconnecting themselves from their friends at school. Maybe their grades start slipping and they're not spending as much time, putting as much time into school and as much effort. For adults with isolation, you really see them completely close off. There will be a lot of calling into work. There will be a lot of canceling events, canceling on family, canceling on friends. It's really, with the younger ages, it's more of a slow shift of isolation. And with adults, it tends to be almost immediate.
That's really helpful. And I mean, it's, I think, a very subtle thing to see in someone else. It's also, this is such a weird comparison, but have you ever gone to your refrigerator to make a shopping list and you're like, all right, what's not in here?
Yes.
Right. It's like, I have no idea what's done in here. Like, I can't even remember, because it's like your mind has to fill in things that are missing, which I think is harder for a mind to process, at least mine. So
Mhm.
to see something missing, like I was just thinking when you were talking about Facebook, when you were talking about like what to look for, I'm like, on Facebook, who have I not seen lately? But is that because Facebook stopped showing me their stuff, or because they've started to separate themselves from society and isolate and insulate more, which
Mhm.
could be a warning sign? So I
Mhm.
guess the lesson I'm hearing is that each of us in our own inner circle, in our own tighter, more connected relationships, need to take responsibility for each other as a society and keep
Mhm.
an eye on things and look for the kinds of things that could be along lines of what you're talking about. Because if it's some person that I knew in high school that I loved dearly but never see, and now all of a sudden they stopped showing up on Facebook, would I really notice the carrots are missing when I didn't
Right.
have them on a list? So
Yeah.
that's sort of what I'm kind of processing a little bit. Now, just to kind of pivot a little bit to a different topic, because you also talk about body image and you
Yes.
talk about eating disorders. I mean, maybe those are not the same kind of conversation. Maybe they're separate. But share a little about your expertise and your story around that.
Well, I actually dancing with disordered eating when I was around 10. I was in gymnastics, and I learned very quickly that the girls who weighed less jumped higher and landed more gracefully, and things like that. So I began doing as much restricting of my food as I could, which is difficult as a 10-year-old because you're living at home and your parents are feeding you, and you're, sitting at a lunch table at school. And
Clean your
um,
plate.
exactly. Your food is monitored at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything serious at that point, but that's really where the mindset started for me. And as I continued getting older and I started getting more independence with my food, I had more opportunity to restrict. And I grew up in the age of the Britney Spearses and the Christina Aguileras and the little teeny tiny, singers running around in their belly shirts. And it was just very much an image that this is how you're supposed to look, and this is what's acceptable, and this is what's popular, and this is what's considered beautiful. Um, and I remember very clearly that all I wanted to do with my life was be the next Britney Spears. Um, and again, as I started getting older, I would learn from there were movies that I learned bulimic behaviors from. There was a friend that taught me some bulimic behaviors. As I started getting older, I kind of shifted more into the bulimia space, and that lasted for many, many years. I worked in Los Angeles as an actor for about 5 years, and it was really an experience of, making my living going into these little rooms with executives, and their sole job was to tell me what was wrong with me. Um, and it was very much connected in the sense that the smaller I got, the more I would book jobs. So it was very, very much connected in the sense that the smaller you are, the more valuable you are. And it just compounded the disordered eating in such a huge way that, again, by the time I moved home to deal with the depression and to handle that, I was also moving home to deal with the bulimia and to get that under control. And I was just really a wreck. And that's kind of, again, where the license plate came in, is just a reminder of you can get through this.
I think self-worth is a key piece to all of this.
Absolutely.
I take a look at my own life, and my self-worth until pretty recently was, basement level low.
Mhm.
And I look at how as I have transformed my own conversation with myself, like my coaching practice and my coaching business is called I Woke Up Awesome. Just like your license plate, it is to remind me every second that I woke up awesome and you woke up awesome, and we are exactly as we are. We are whole. We are perfect. We are powerful.
Love it.
And I think that, yeah, I think that self-worth definitely plays a part. Right? Like if the person is generally high in self-worth, if they have self-confidence, if they speak positively about themselves, I think those could be indicators too. What are your thoughts on all of that?
I think that's absolutely correct. It reminds me of the eating disorder treatment that I am currently working in. It reminds me of how they approach exercise. And for example, I am not at the point yet where I'm necessarily allowed to be back in a gym. And that is because I still have the mindset that I would be going and working out to change my body. And the mindset that you need to have in eating disorder recovery in order to be able to step foot back in a gym is the mindset of wanting to take care of your health and wanting to get that endorphin high and wanting to, if you enjoy lifting weights, fantastic. But it reminds me of that because it's so much of it is the mindset behind what's driving those behaviors. Those reasons can really divide whether they are going down the road toward disordered eating or whether they are doing it for quote unquote the right reasons. So mindset is absolutely everything behind it, I think.
Now, do you have any upcoming speaking opportunities that you'd like to share or let us know about that we could see you speak? Because I know you're a keynote speaker as well.
But I do have a virtual summit coming up on May 6th, and that's through the Life Mastery Foundation. So that's on May 6th at 2:00 Central Standard Time. And that talk is about reaching the other side and why fighting through depression is the best decision you'll ever make for yourself. So we have that one coming up. And then also on my website, I have several free resources that are available. And right now I'm also leading free online support meetings every Sunday at 4:00 Pacific time.
Oh, that's awesome. And all of that is on your website?
All of it's on my website.
So we'll be providing links to your summit, your free resources, and also your virtual interactions and supports that you're offering to people as well when in the show notes for the episode. Is there anything else, any last words you'd like to share as we wrap up?
I think as far as last words, I would just want to say whatever you find yourself going through right now, a lot of people that do find my work find themselves in the midst of sometimes huge struggles, and just know that you are supported and that you have resources out there that can help move you through that, and that you are not alone in going through it. And a lot of those resources that you can find to get yourself to the other side, there's so much free information on the internet these days that you really have the opportunity to dive deep and to do a lot of that work that you need to do to move through where you are. You don't have to stay stuck in that pain, in that life, in that space that you don't want to live in.
Beautiful, perfect sentiment to leave people with. Now, I like to turn the tables and have you get the opportunity to ask me one question. Do you have a question for me?
I would love to know how you got into podcasting.
Yeah, I think the podcast platform is one I keep coming back to. I've actually done, this is my 4th podcast.
Wow.
I've done 2 as a co-host. And then I was a host and producer for one. It's just a freelance gig I got because of all my podcasting experience. But when I got to the point of really wanting to tell stories about vanity plates, which seems like an odd thing to want to do, but there it is, I thought the podcasting would be the perfect environment. And then I could get to do something I've always wanted to do, which was a free form interview conversation style. Yeah, but both of the times that I was a co-host, I always ended up being the person asking the questions. I'm more comfortable in that role. So it's perfect for me. But now I actually I'm doing something that you've been doing a lot, which is I've started to be a guest on other people's podcasts.
Yeah.
And that's a completely different experience as well, to show up to somebody else's platform on their agenda with their questions and their prep and their process. So I have a lot of respect for you because I know you do that a lot, and appreciate the professionalism and knowledge that you brought to us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Good, me too. Thank you so much. And I wish you well. I wish you so much success. You have a really important message and a really important platform, and it needs to be heard. And so I wish you so much success in that.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for making a difference.
Of course.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Trista's Plate Story podcast. Follow Amanda at Amanda Gist on Instagram, or visit her website at amandagist.com, where you can register for her upcoming Mental Health Summit. Please subscribe to Trista's Plate Story podcast to get the story behind all those vanity plates driving with you on the road. And if you would like to nominate the owner of a license plate, including you, or visit any of our partners and sponsors, come and see us at platestory.com. That's PL8STORY.com, and give us the details. If you enjoyed this episode, please drop a review and give us a share. I'm Trista Polo, wishing you well on the road to your next adventure.